I'll tell you what, guys, when it comes to politics, it is really dirty, isn't it? Politics is a nasty, nasty, dirty business. Now, we're going to get into the whole Makerfield debate. Now, political parties are going to stand their candidates and they are going to do anything they can to get their candidates to win. That's the job. Now, once over, to gain the perfect route to being voted in, you would have to promise the people they were going to benefit. What were the people going to get out of your candidate getting in? What was the bigger picture? Now, we don't have that anymore with elections. Now, everything is just, oh, don't go for this party because they're going to do that. Don't go for this party because they're going to do that. There is just lies and rhetoric all over the political landscape, no matter what it is. Now, we talking about the Makerfield election. Now, one, I'm going to come out and say this, and I'm going to come out and say this really honestly from what I think. The Makerfield election shouldn't even be a thing in my mind. If there is no one in Labour capable of challenging Keir Starmer, capable of taking on the role as Prime Minister, then we should not be able to let candidates come from the outside and bunny hop or piggyback off the election process. It's a piss take of the election process, if I'm honest. But the amount of people that I hear, if Andy Burnham gets in, he is going to tidy up Labour. Andy Burnham is not going to tidy up Labour. Andy Burnham literally is Keir Starmer with some semblance of a soul. That's all Andy Burnham is. He's got the same mindset. He's got the same mandate as Keir Starmer. And whether you believe it or not, the mandate they're following is not even theirs. It is given to them by their puppet masters. And that's what politics is. It is the puppet masters that manipulate the puppets that then manipulate the people. That's the way it's always been for as long as I remember. Only in the modern day, it's a bit more in your face. It's a bit more brash. It's harder to hide. Now, one of the most annoying things I come across is reform. Reform voters and reform shills. Alex Phillips come out the other day on X and stated she had this article ready to go on Rupert Law and was waiting to release it. It's like, if you had an article ready to go, if you got proof of Rupert Law doing something bad, you would have released it. Now, on her programme today, she was like, the political oppositions have got expensive lawyers, the millionaires and stuff like this. It's like, no, Alex, I'll tell you what you're doing. You are trying to paint Rupert Law in a bad light that you've got no evidence of. This is why you are not saying what evidence you've got. You're not claiming what he has done. It's because at the end of the day, you are just putting a little tidbit out there and letting everybody else guess. And everybody else is going to guess the worst. And you know what? When you get pushed on it, this is your defense for saying you've got something ready to go. You've got proof of this, that, and the other. But you are too afraid to release it. What you are doing, to me, is you are putting an air of doubt. You are sowing the seed of doubt into the people's minds. Because, obviously, Reform has already called the police on Rupert Law, claiming all of these lies, claiming he was bad to women and bad to other people within the party, the underlings and such as. When said underlings, sorry to use that terminology, was questioned, there was no evidence. So that's what people's going to assume that you mean. And you know this. And when it comes out and you get your way, and people will say, so what was this thing with Rupert Law? Oh, I don't know. I seen him walking into a venue once and he didn't hold the door for another woman. That's going to be something as simple as that. It's going to be so mundane, so benign. Believe me, if she had proof of anything, she would release it no matter about the lawyers. They've got Talk TV to back her. They've got Nigel Farage and the rest of the Reform Party to back her. Nigel Farage isn't short of a few, but why do you think he's doing this? But it's not only Alex Phillips, you know, all the mouthpieces that come on Talk Radio, even GB News, but they're not as pushy as Talk TV, including all the guests and the political commentators, they like to call themselves. And on top of all this, we have Matt Goodwin coming onto X, saying that a vote for Restore is a vote for Labour, and we'll see Andy Burnham, a far-left government, in power till 2031. And at first I misread this. I honestly thought that Matt Goodwin, a Reform candidate, I thought Matt Goodwin actually believed that if Andy Burnham was to challenge the Prime Minister and got the role, the clock would reset and start again. But no, I read it wrong. It was that Andy Burnham will call an early general election a snap election. And he's trying to scare the electorate. You cannot scare the electorate by giving us what we want. A threat of something we want is not fear. So understand that. And I think the reason he's done this is because, was it the Telegraph put out that there was a poll done. If Andy Burnham were to call a snap election, then there is a good chance that Labour would win it. Bollocks. Look, Andy Burnham is a more subtle Keir Starmer. You know, Keir Starmer's so unaware that he just steams right in like a ADHD racehorse, you know, and doesn't have a clue. He doesn't think things through. He doesn't conceptualize things. He's just like a blank slate. He just takes his orders and steams with them like that. Andy Burnham is going to be slightly more subtle, but still, it's Keir Starmer. You know, the overall mandate is there. It's not their mandate. And Reform know this. And I have to wonder, because when you hear that Reform does this, Reform, don't forget the local elections, what we've just had, the amount of non-British nationals that Reform stood for council positions in the UK was an indictment on where they stand, if I'm honest. It was an indictment of who Reform are. They will come at Restore like you're an unknown party. You've only got a fringe online group of people. They know this is wrong. And they are afraid. That's the thing. They're afraid. Because you ask the general person on the street, you can take a poll in the street, whether they're members of the online right or whatever it is. The general public on the street, when you ask who they're going to vote for, Restore comes up a lot more than Reform does. And you have a few people saying, well, Restore, I was all for Nigel Farage, but he's gone back on a lot of what he said. And that is the repeating factor of what we hear. And this is what I said a long time ago. I didn't trust Nigel Farage. In fact, the cabal, the establishment, if you like, must be paying Nigel Farage a lot more than they paid Keir Starmer, because Nigel Farage has done what Keir Starmer couldn't. Keir Starmer, he played to the minority, which if we had a larger turnout and it wasn't just a case of getting rid of the Tories, then Labour would not have got a majority. You look at how low the vote ship was. But with Reform, they were a lot better, because Reform actually played up to the majority, and they told the majority of the nation what we wanted to hear. And they gained this traction, and they gained this traction because the British public thought they were getting a party that was fighting for them. Now, when they got that traction, this is when I believe they were approached or some kind of meeting went on. And like I said, I think Nigel Farage and Reform got offered a lot more than Keir Starmer and Labour did. Because Reform all of a sudden flip-flopped on everything, then started echoing the Labour rhetoric, you know. And that was a worrying sign when they got all this momentum by promising deportations of illegals and the whole visa reform and stuff like this, and then all of a sudden it's like it's an impossible task, and then you take out all of the bad seeds from the Conservatives and you stuff them in your party. They didn't just take MPs that were in the Tories who were mostly unknown. They took previous sitting ministers who oversaw a lot of what we are going through. Robert Jenrick, for one. Leading up to defecting to Reform, they started echoing the same rhetoric as Reform. You know, they seem to have changed their stance and have forgotten all about what they oversaw, and then started coming out on the side of the right. Now, this was the timing. It was all planned. It was all going to go this way. When you have Reform coming out, and during the last local elections, and stating that Restore Britain, Rupert Lowe and the Great Yarmouth First Movement would not get 1%, even in Great Yarmouth. And then Great Yarmouth First stormed the board. Everything they stood for, they won. Now, remember one thing. Rupert Lowe has been an MP in Great Yarmouth for a couple of years now. If he was doing a bad job, if he was a dodgy character, Great Yarmouth and its surrounding areas would not go all in on him, would they? See, this is a thing. When you get to prove yourself, and this is what it's all about, reform. There was a time when I thought reform, you know, the best of a bad situation. But in my local council is reform run. And our council tax has gone up exponentially from what it was. So I did some digging, and nearly most reform councillors have put up the maximum council tax they can. They've took over local councils and just decided to bleed the constituents dry. So when I say about a testing ground, you know, local council elections are the best testing ground you can get for what a party really stands for. Because once they get a sniff of power and they, you know, you can see they're going to make your life a misery. You know that they're not good as the head of the country. They're just not. You know, you might get the odd rogue council. You're going to get that. You're going to get that with any party, you know. But when you've got the majority of councils that are all seemingly rogue, then that is party-wide. It's either a systemic failure or a systematic plan. One thing I really have to add, and I really have to emphasise this, is right now, reform are scared. You've got reform voters acting like Labour voters. You've got reform shills acting like Labour shills. Talk radio, and certainly Alex Phillips, is the biggest, and I mean the biggest culprit of this. Now, I'm not saying Alex Phillips is a bad person. In fact, there are many topics Alex Phillips talks on, and her passion in talking about them is what makes her. And she discovered this a long time ago. So she's learned to make this her niche, her presenter identity, and it works for her. I do kind of like Alex Phillips when she comes out with some stuff. When you come out with just a full-on attack, it's like all them times when she was talking about this and talking about that. How much of it was genuine and how much of it was like it is now? I have no doubt she's genuinely upset with Restore because it affects her. It affects her bottom line. You know, it affects her allegiances. But this is the thing. Allegiances. We keep on hearing that the problems with this country isn't going to get fixed unless we get reform in. I ask the question, what is reform going to do to fix this country? Because from what I've heard of late, they're not going to do anything. Yes, forget all the bullshit about Farage doing away with the NHS. I've never heard him say that. And if I had, a lot of the things that Labour's claiming, if I heard him say this, I would call it out. But I've never heard any of this, you know. But I also don't know where reforms stand anymore. That's the problem. Reform were never, ever right of politics. They weren't. Reform is, in my opinion, even back in the day, they were centre. Maybe they were slightly right of centre. But now, they, to me, are left of centre, and they've fallen further left. They are falling into the mandate, the ideas, the ideology of what Labour stand for. Look at every action Reform do. They are just another rendition of the Labour Party. I'm sorry to say it. And I know that's going to piss a lot of people off, but it's my truth. It's what I see, it's what I feel, it's what I think. And I come to this conclusion by watching them and analysing what they've said, what they say, you know, the people they align with, the people they invite, the people they put out. They're not what they promised. They are more of what the current establishment does. The last local elections, look, in many places, when you looked at the candidates, you would really struggle to point out if that candidate was a Green candidate, a Labour candidate, or a Reform candidate. Because I'm sorry to say, they were standing all the same people in many, many places. So, for the majority of the electorate, which, yeah, I said it, we are the majority, you know, because we're silenced, does not mean to say that we aren't many. You know, we're just silenced, we're cuckolded. And it's sad that we've let ourselves get into that position, but that's where we are. You have to look, it's Restore come out and tells you straight, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. We're going to do this. And so far, he's stuck to his guns. But what really scares, not just Reform, but the whole establishment, is that Restore set records from setting up their party to gathering members. They did all that in record time. They were barely an official party when they already started polling. You know, the momentum that Restore has got, no other party has ever seen. Even Reform are doing well now. But Reform took years to get that momentum. You know, even considering we had Nigel Farage, which come from UKIP and other renditions of that, which in the past didn't do well. That's one thing you've got to understand. So it took them a long time to gain momentum, to gain the membership that they have. Then Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain come in, and they gained everything like that. Do you know why? And it is not just because of who Rupert Lowe is. It is not just because of what Restore Britain is. It is because what Rupert Lowe stands for. What Restore Britain stands for. This is the important thing which every other politician realises but are too afraid to embrace. Because to embrace what Restore Britain have embraced, they have to go against their forced mandate. And which makes it counterintuitive. We all know what happens if you try to go against that mandate. Ask Liz Truss. She has now become a stain on British politics through no fault of her own, in my honest opinion. Liz Truss was set up because she tried to steer the ship away from the narrative they were driving. And they will do the same with Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain. Mark my words. But no, it's because Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain stand for and speak for the people. What they want is what we want. And when I hear of splitting the vote, you have to bear in mind, this country is a breaking point. Even the most quietest people, even the most non-political, are starting to become political because they are starting to realise that politics, it really affects us all every day. You cannot avoid politics at all. It dictates how you live your very life. And people are slowly starting to realise this. So what Rupert Lowe has gathered is a lot of new voters who wouldn't normally vote. And we have gained a lot of Reform voters who felt let down by Reform. I'm going to take Reform's rhetoric and call it like this. It is Reform who is splitting the vote. What this Makerfield by-election would do if Restore Britain wins it, it cements them. And it really will cement them as a true party to be reckoned with. Coming off the back of the success of the local elections and then, God willing, winning the Makerfield by-election, that will put every political party and the establishment at whole, the elites, it will put them on the back foot. It will make them think, because Restore Britain is changing politics. It is changing the face of politics. It is changing what we know as politics, what we've took as a given. And it's showing the people it doesn't have to be like that. It can be like this. Because politics is for the people. But for as long as I can remember, or as long as I've sat up and took notice, the politics hasn't been for the people. The people haven't even had a say in politics. That's what's gone wrong. Our rights have been removed. Our voice has been removed and has been replaced ever so loudly with the voice of the elites and those who think they have power regardless of the people. Governments now sit and they believe that they have the power over the people, when the actual truth of politics is it is the people who have the power of the leadership. That is the truth. That is politics. That is what politics was meant to be, and that's what politics will be again. And this is what scares the whole establishment, all your political parties, and Reform mainly are really, really scared. It is obvious at this point how scared Reform are, because the only way Reform can beat Restore is by going back and acting on and giving the people what they promised in the first place. And I don't think they're prepared to do that, because they will all stand to lose their cushy lives, which they've chanced to have been promised. That's not fact. I'm not stating that as fact, but I do believe that the same funding, the same paymasters that are paying Labour are the same paymasters that will be funding, are funding reform now. That's just my take on it. I'm not rooting this in fact. I've got no sources, because it is just my opinion. And I've got that opinion because it was just the actions of reform. There comes a point, could I be wrong about Restore? Yeah, I could. I don't think I am, but yeah, there is every chance that I give Restore all this back and all this faith, and Restore could be a wolf in sheep's clothing. But I have to go on actions. If Restore do turn out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, then all that says is politics as a whole does not work. If the best option, and in my humble opinion, Restore Britain are the best option, but if they turn out to be wrong, politics needs ripping down and rebuilding. Fundamentally, foundationally, simple as that. And it's like I keep on saying, it doesn't matter who gets in next. If you don't do the right thing, this country's gone. The people will revolt. Simple as that. So whether you've got, if Labour's still going to be in power, I don't care if it's Keir Starmer or Andy Burnham. I really don't. In fact, I'm the big fan of lesser of two evils. Perhaps for the short term, Andy Burnham may be that lesser of two evils. But I don't think so. I think it's just the same. We're on the same trajectory, no matter which one's in. So I don't want to hear about this splitting the vote because of Restore. What I want to see, Restore stand and take that election, because that is going to be the true turning point of this country. Because what that is going to do, it is going to scare the establishment, it is going to scare the parties, and it is going to make the people open their eyes. And even more importantly, people's eyes are already on Great Yarmouth, see what job they do there. Then their eyes will be on Makersfield. When you look at the amount of councils and townships that Reform's got, then you look at Labour's, you look within them constituencies, and then you look at, admittedly, the very few that Restore's got at the minute, but you look at the differences within them places, and people's really going to sit up and take notice. Because like I said, it is actions. Anybody can promise you the world. Very few can deliver. So I don't listen to these people saying, we are going to do this, we are going to do that. I look at, well, you've done this and we're close to doing that. You have not done one thing towards what you said you've done. Everything you've done is negative. So I can't believe your words because I can't trust your actions. And that truly does go for every party. It does. Right now in the UK, it is a unity party. And Restore is, in my opinion, the change for that. And there is only one way. And it's going to be a rocky road. It's going to be hard and people's going to be on your back. But I don't care. I'll openly state my allegiances. I'm not ashamed of my allegiances. I am proud. I'm confident of my choice. And here's the thing. It's been a long time since I've been able to say that. Even when I was behind reform, because we had no other choice. Which is the only reason I was behind reform. Because we had no choice. I was not confident. And I've vocalized how many times I wasn't confident. I didn't trust. I thought, and I've said it many times, Farage has got his price. As soon as he gains power, he's sold out. If he hasn't already. I've said that from the start. But I've never had that feeling from Restore, so I'm fairly confident. And like I said, that's a new confidence for me. I haven't had that for a long time. Don't worry about splitting the vote. That's not what this is about. All it is at the minute is they're trying to get Restore to back down, which Restore is not going to back down. And two, they're going to badmouth. You know when a political party is a threat because we will see all the slander come out against that party. Labour did it to Reform. Reform is doing it to Restore. It is fear, not truth. And out of fear, lies are born. On that, guys, I'm going to go and I will catch you in the next video. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves in there. Enjoy the climate change. It's lovely out there.